Hello.
Hi.
Hello and welcome to the eighth and the final artist talk in the Compulsive Spring Pulse series. I am Ioana Mândrescu, and I'm a founding member of Compulsive. Compulsive is a platform for sound art founded by a few artists who met each other during their studies and that wanted to be together after, online and offline. And today we invite Matt Harding. Hello, Matt.
Hi.
um, our last guest for the Compulsive series. Matt presented a beautiful series of sound films called Punctuations, which you can still view on our Pulse channel on YouTube until tomorrow. And now, again, hello, and how are you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Nice to talk to you. Thanks for
Very nice to see you.
thanks for the invitation. It's nice to be able to talk about your work a little bit. Yeah.
Um, and I guess there's a lot to talk about. You are a very complex artist. Um, and I did not know you before this Pulse series, so there was a lot to take in. Um, so you're a musician and a sound designer and a visual artist.
Uh,
And could you please tell us more, for those of us who don't know you, could you please tell us more about your practice?
um, yeah, okay. I mean, don't feel bad about not knowing me because that's quite a lot of people. Um, I, yeah, I suppose I come from music background. And these days probably that's less emphasis on music, although I still make music all the time. There's less emphasis on making it and recording it, and I spend more of my time now thinking about non-music based things like films, writing things, yeah, short videos, and working with sound outside of music. Um,
But nonetheless, even your short films are very musical, and I found it rather interesting that even the parts where there was no sound, you feel the presence of sound because it's so suggested by the movement, and the movements are so rhythmical that in the end, the piece that you have presented becomes music. At least to me, I have perceived it as a very musical piece.
yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Definitely, and I think when I was thinking about it, the editing of it, how the pauses when one piece should go into another piece, the repetition. Yeah, it's very musical in a way. There's a rhythm to it. Although perhaps I'm not thinking particularly in those terms when I'm doing it, but yes, it comes through definitely.
Being a musician myself, I was trained as a classical pianist,
Okay.
and I practiced it for 30 years until I moved to sound art. I know that it's very difficult to take the musician out of the artist. And when I first switched, I know I had to make conscious efforts to not think everything in terms of music. Does this happen to you as well? Is this a conscious straying away from music, or it
Uh,
happened naturally?
Um, I it is something that I still think about all the time, and I have a little bit of a difficult way of thinking about either doing music or non-music. I can't sort of somehow reconcile the two things as the same thing. So I think just my own nature, if I'm doing music, I start, of course, I'm thinking about what I'm doing, but I start thinking about the other things that I could be doing. And then if I'm doing a film or something, then I start thinking about music. It's a bit like these people that are close to me that I feel like I should be seeing or spending time with. But yeah, it's a bit unresolved. Sounds a bit dramatic, but I I think it will always be in me. It's just where I put my focus.
On your website, which I encourage everyone that's watching to go check out, there is a special section of little films, but they are accompanied by sound. Can you tell me a little bit about those films?
Um, I'm trying to think of which ones they are. I haven't looked at my website for a while. They're probably films that that I started making a few years ago, and um, they well, I've always like really enjoyed visual things, so it's me exploring making and not making film. It's making, but without perhaps knowing exactly what the end point will be. So there is some different things on there. There is one piece that's about messages. When you are looking for messages, you can kind of see them in patterns of everything. Um, yeah, I'm not sure what else. I'm not sure what else is on there, it sounds which sounds really bad. But oh no, okay, I do know that a few other things that are on there. Uh, yeah, the one is a film of a fire, but through a camera and then through another camera, and one is a piece that was part of a bigger piece, like a film that was inside an installation. They each have like quite specific relationships to sound, um, but not intentionally.
Not intention, because the end result and why I wanted to talk about them is, as I said, not knowing you, I just went from one thing to another, listened to your music, went to your website, tried to research a little bit your installation work. But those films fascinated me because at the time when I was watching them, I had a little kid next to me who was very, very attracted by them, and we started playing with them. And I realized that I can actually use them as a little bit of a musical instrument. If you start one and then the other, sometimes they play overlap, and they work greatly as a little toy. And we had quite 20 minutes of fun, which for a kid is a lot.
Okay,
Um,
that's high praise, I think. Like to be able to hold the attention of a child.
Yes, yes, and that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about them, and I recommend them not just as films, but really as a beautiful musical instrument. Because for me, as someone who doesn't know you and doesn't know your work that well, they were very much connected.
Mm, yeah.
Though maybe it's just you have the same sort of, you recognize a style, and then.
I think all everything I make, for me anyway, kind of comes from the same sort of place and has the same. It can be quite different in a way, but there's a similarity. So it's like a big set of the same tools, but different outcomes from the same materials, even though they're not literally the same materials. Just it's like reconfiguring something and then making something else, and then reconfiguring it and making something else. And often things I make will start from the end point of the last thing. So they might feature something from the last piece, and I might take a fragment and use it as a beginning, but in a different way. Or it will be a reaction to the last thing, but not in an explicit way. But yeah.
While watching them, I had to think about the piece that you presented now on our platform. Um, are they in any way related? Is there a connection between the films on your website and this collection of films you've presented
Uh,
and the installation that they belong to?
I mean, not really. I'm just gonna get, do you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna get my website up because then I can refer, because, you know, I'm a bit disorganized. So when I put things up, I can't remember what I put up necessarily. And let me, oh yeah, okay, I can see. I don't think there's any relation apart from, uh, yeah, some things I like to make really quickly. Um, uh, Either because I just don't have much time, or it's more like an impulse where I just suddenly have to make things. Like, you know, if you suddenly have to scratch, or you suddenly have an impulse to film, and so I record something very quickly, and then maybe a couple of weeks later I'll come back to it and decide to do something with it, like an ingredient, or I'll have the intention of making something very quickly and finishing it quickly. Like you know, like I set the sort of parameters for myself. Like, right, you have to make something in 1 hour. Sometimes I think like I'm sort of trying to be a bit like at a college for myself. I just set myself lots of tasks, rules. Okay, right, tomorrow you have to take this thing that you've had for 3 years that you don't know what to do with, and you have to finish it by lunchtime. Or you have to make something from not the last thing, but the thing before. So it's just keeping my brain active. Yeah.
And is this your way of operating in general, or is this something new? Because yes, when you described your piece, you talked about the fact that you wanted to do a lot of things quickly and sort of in one breath.
Yeah, I think that's just the mood I've been in. Um, yeah, I can't really say why, but I suppose in the past, even like with my music, a lot of it has taken quite a long time to edit, and I've thought about it quite a lot, even though it doesn't sound like that necessarily. It sounds quite it sounds quite off the cuff, but I just there's a bit of pleasure for me in just making something and not worrying too much about spending too long on it, and perhaps the feeling that was put into making it or recording it is the main ingredient. Um, yeah. So yeah, it's just been a period of time where I've wanted to do these things quite quickly, um, and but I sort of feel a bit almost like it's coming to an end somehow. Um, like now I've started to think about I want to just do one thing. Um,
Um, do you think this could be also due to the last years where we were a bit forced to be too a lot with ourselves and just keep ourselves busy in any way we could because venues were closed, concert opportunities were basically not there.
mhm.
Do you think this kind of mood of giving you little tasks and doing them fast was also influenced by this, or
Uh,
there isn't necessarily a connection?
I'm not. I mean, definitely, maybe not so consciously, but you know, I think spending that amount of time at home in that way, as a lot of people did, would definitely have had an effect on me. I think you know, consciously, I released a lot of music at that time. Like, if I look at my timeline of releasing music, it was every few years, and then during the last couple of years, there was just like a load of stuff just came out. So maybe there's a feeling of need for some sort of action, but also in my own my own habits. I wanted to just change my approach, not in an artificial way, but just I worked a long way for in the same way for a long time, and I think that I wanted to try a different way of approaching things quickly, more improvisational, including other people, which actually hasn't really happened. But everything that I've not engaged with so much before, I just wanted to let in. Yeah.
This piece is part of an installation.
Well, that was that was the last time I showed it. There wasn't as many of these films then, and there was probably about half the amount. And yeah, I projected them in. There's a local gallery called Diffuse, which is really nice. Small space for sound, mainly sound dedicated work. And yeah, I projected them then, and I think I thought of them a little bit differently then. They were just one projection on their own, just not all of them together, but just one, which would loop over and over. And there might be one other one somewhere. And so it was more about the effect of focusing in on one piece. And then I would perform music intermittently. So that gave it a different feeling. I think I didn't really know what they are, these films, when I was there. You know, they're there, that I've made them. But in terms of like thinking, well, what are they? They're just like a material, I think. And now there's more of them. I feel like I know a bit, I understand them a bit better what they are, but maybe that's as well coming from music background. I don't spend too much time in analysis of my own work. Like, I think the first time I remember someone said, like, what is your practice? I hadn't really ever thought about that. I thought, well, what do I do? Okay. And yeah, anyway. And it's quite interesting to turn that on yourself, because perhaps you can learn something new. And yeah.
About thinking about one's practice, you run a sound art platform, the Thames Submarine. I looked over it a little bit, and there's quite a little bit of writing also. Not your writing, but you've invited artists to give you text. Can you talk a little bit about this?
What, the writing specifically, or
the platform, and what exactly is, and how did this start? Is it just yours, or did you do it in collaboration with other artists? And a little bit also about the decision of including writing on your platform, because that's, especially since you said that you're not someone who necessarily thinks a lot about his practice, or puts it down on words on paper.
Yeah, that is something I started a couple of years ago, and I think that what I initially visualized was just a single page on the internet where a video or sound piece could exist, and it would just change intermittently. And I just thought that would be interesting to have a space. And then the element of talking to the artist was really an afterthought. But actually, it's something that I've discovered that I really enjoy doing, because I'm quite inquisitive, and I probably prefer talking more to other people about what they do, necessarily about. But yeah, perhaps I enjoy coming from a sort of perhaps less academic, from a less academic angle, in terms of my questions. I suppose because I've made things and been a musician, I was just sort of curious, and I asked the kind of questions that sometimes I would think, about myself. How do you do that? Or why have you done that? Or what's brought you to this? And just talk to them in quite a sort of informal, personal way. And I think that's definitely something that during the COVID lockdowns, I think people were quite receptive to talking. And some people, I just knew their pieces, like Ellen Fullman, I don't know if you know her, but I didn't know that, well, where she was or anything, but I could just found her on the internet and wrote to her, and she was just receptive to getting involved. So I've actually been able to talk to a lot of people, and it's been really, I mean, selfishly, I think I've got a lot out of just chatting to people. Like, I've really loved chatting to people about their work. It's been a little bit difficult to keep it going once a month, and I might slow it down a bit so I can keep the quality up rather than having to do it every few weeks. But yeah, I've loved doing it. I do it on my own, but I've sort of thought about like getting other people involved, because especially if there's a couple of months where I'm doing something else and I can't think of something. So I think with this, there's no rules. Like, I normally end up putting up rules when I do things, not deliberately, but just because of my personality. And I think with this, I'm sort of dissolving all these kind of rules that I normally have in place. So I would love to hand it over to someone else for a bit, or I would love to we did a live show at Cafe Otto, which was really good, and I want to do a few more of those. Yeah, it's been a really good thing, and it just sort of started just from a tiny idea and just keep going. Yeah, I would just like to keep it going, and as long as there's interesting work and someone that was interested in talking, I'd like to keep it going. So yeah, it's been great. The writing side of it is really because writing as a practice is something quite alien to me, but I have started to do it, and it's just been very interesting how I've realized that you can learn new things in the process of writing. And for me, that was a bit of a revelation. The act of writing has taught me something that I didn't know before I started. So it's a way of getting something out. And I know a lot of people, I do read other pieces, and I just think it's another channel for people thoughts to come out through. So, and some people are much more engaged in it. So some people are not interested in contributing in that way. But I just think it's another voice. If people are, it's really nice. So, yeah. And yeah, the reason it's called the Thames Submarine is because
that was the next question.
well,
it's a funny title.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like the title, but it's one of these things that just I was looking after my kids. Well, I sort of have been staying at home looking after my kids for like a few years. And then some days I feel completely at peace with it all, and sometimes I feel like chaotic, like I'm not in control. So I think one of those days I was thinking, I need an activity, and I was just thinking, right, what else have I not looked at? And then I thought maybe there's a Thames submarine, which was a really stupid idea because the Thames is not deep enough for anything like that. And it's sort of funny, but once I imagined it, then it kind of got stuck in my head, and it also reminded me a little bit of this idea of heterotopic spaces, which is something I read about a few years ago, about spaces, imaginary spaces that open and close, that have their own rules and their own environments. And in my head, it sort of carried on existing. And I thought, well, it could be like this space where this work exists. Anyway, I just joined the two things together. So the title is, it comes from something completely unrelated, but I've sort of brought it in and made it into something different.
So all of this started during the stay-at-home period.
Exactly. So in that way, it's very. I guess a lot of people started new projects and things during that time. Like, you know.
Yeah, this project started in the same way. Compulsive started just because we wanted to be together and we didn't know how, and we wanted to still talk to people and
Right.
still get engaged.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good, and I don't know if the need is the same if then all the conditions change. I don't know in your case. In my case, yes, it might change a little bit, but it will carry on. I think it takes something like that for me to actually get it going in the first place. But yeah, I guess a lot of people began new things.
And like you say, also the courage to start something new that comes a little bit also out of boredom. I think for us these interviews that we're doing, they're quite interesting because I don't think any of us ever did such a thing before.
Yeah.
So I know every time I have to talk to someone, especially if it's someone I don't know, I am so nervous and I'm so afraid. Because how do you talk about someone's work, someone who you encountered basically 4 days ago? How?
I mean, that is really interesting because I relate to that because I'm normally in that position. I get very nervous. I have some little notes around me, things like that. But yeah, but I don't know. I suppose I'm cheating because I just pick things that I really love. Whereas you guys, maybe it's more an exercise in picking a series of artists. Some you might like more than others. So for me, that's my parameter. I pick something that I love, so I can always just jump back into it. Yeah, it would be too difficult. Well, no, it would be an interesting exercise. But yeah, I think actually, I think when I emailed with you earlier, it made me think about how do I actually talk to people, and I suppose it is. I don't know what I'm going to ask before we start. It is a bit like an improvisation in that way, without being a bit too pretentious about it. But I just start, and then I record, and often it can go on for like a long time, which is great, and you end up with some interesting stuff. But the editing afterwards, I normally edit quite severely, edit it down to like, like reducing down a food or something. So the edit becomes, you sort of pay in the editing of it. But I don't know how you approach these interviews, but do you plan it methodically or?
Well, in our case, it's a bit different because you are alone. We're actually a group, and we're trying to be all more or less equally involved. So everyone proposes artists that they really like,
right,
and the other ones get to discover them, and then it's an interesting exercise to then give the task of the talk to someone who's not that familiar with the work.
Okay. So do you have to, what about if you didn't like their artwork? Do you still have to go ahead and do it?
Well, no, I guess you could pass it on to someone else, but so far, and we've been a little bit lucky with how we are. We haven't messed up that much. So I think all the people that were suggested we liked, or even if we didn't like that much, there were questions to be asked. Because there's art that you like, and there's art that you dislike, and you're really thinking this one shouldn't be there or anywhere, and then there's art that you do not connect to, but it definitely has a right to live, and it should definitely be viewed and reflected on.
Yeah.
So that's also very, very important to understand exactly how you connect to something, and you don't necessarily need to discuss only with artists that you love. You should just be able to discuss with artists that you respect, and you might actually get to love what they're doing by understanding their practice. Because the art world right now is so diverse and so complex, and everyone is going a little bit on their own streak, that you do need for certain people to take a little bit more time to be a part of their universe and then get to like them.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. I think that there's something you can find in everything, and or anyone you talk to. I think you could, you could probably learn something about how they approach something, or an element of their work that you could focus in on one element. There's so many ways to turn and look at different things. I mean, I sometimes find it overwhelming, the amount of work there is if I'm thinking about looking, but then other times I just relax and I don't think in those terms. Yeah, so yeah, it's fascinating. It's quite. I think the one thing about the Thames Submarine is it has a lens of being sound focused, and I think for me, I wouldn't say like sound art is my number one passion. I think I would say that I've always like really enjoyed lots of different arts, and sound is often an element of something, some works, like a video, like some experimental video art, and there's an interesting sound element rather than necessarily sound art. But that I don't know. I think I didn't know a lot about sound art before. I've learned a lot. Sound is a very evocative thing for me. Without me even really knowing about it. If I describe a memory or when I went somewhere, I normally, without knowing, I normally will say, "Oh yeah, and there was this really amazing. You could hear the sound of the birds in nearby." So it is very. I just find it a very evocative element, and I like it sometimes as an element of a greater whole. Yeah.
What about your dreams? Because your videos do seem a little bit like fragments of dreams, also because of the sometimes unlikely meeting between sound and image. Do you dream with a lot of sound? Or is just your imagination filled with sounds?
I I don't know if I do dream a lot of sound. I think I did when I was a kid. I think now I don't remember my dreams so much. Like, how you wake up and they're gone. I don't remember them so much. In fact, I don't feel like I'm dreaming much at all at the moment. I don't know if there's a way to increase or control these things, but yeah, I find how when I look at the films, I find how they relate to sound quite interesting, because some of them might not really relate in any explicit way, and then others, there's something to do with synchronization, or there's something to do with a misplaced sound or the silence. I think that's one thing that's nice when they run into each other, and then if one is silent, then you feel that absence of sound, and it makes you think about it in a different way. So yeah, they have different aspects to do with sound but I wasn't deliberately trying to address that. And I used the tennis ball in some of them, and that was really as a way of just sounding the space around where the tennis ball is.
But the tennis ball starts playing with itself towards the end of the video, which is rather nice. And there's this playfulness to it, and also this sort of surreal atmosphere in them. That's why I asked you about your dreams, because these little films seem like fragments of dreams.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. I think they are very playful and a little bit surreal to the. There's a painting called The Reckless Sleeper. I don't know if you know that. I think it's by Magritte. It reminds me of these films. These films remind me of that somehow, with these kind of individual elements in a sort of ambiguous way. And then there's someone, it's split in half, and there's someone asleep, and then there's a candle, perhaps, and a bird, and one other thing. And you don't really know what it's implying. I mean, I wasn't consciously thinking of that, but yes, that kind of surrealness is something I do like, because it accesses a certain type of feeling. I think it's just a certain type of feeling that I'm trying to access. And if I put the wrong sound or a different sound with a different image, it will be much more evocative somehow than if the right sound goes with the right image.
With the right image, yes. So while looking at your work, not necessarily but also the music, but mostly the installations and the films, and the installations, yes, I didn't see much, I only read the descriptions. Two words came to mind. One is playful, and the other one is nostalgic. There's a sense of nostalgia in some of your installations, which I would like to talk a little bit about. You have this work, After You Were Gone,
yeah,
which I think is the one that precedes this the installation that has these little films.
Yeah,
the way it's listed anyway on your.
Yeah, I mean, I might have been a bit untruthful about when it occurred. It's something that's going on and off all the time. But not too many people are complaining to me about how accurate my timeline is, so it's okay. I can do that. Yeah, that's true. Like I can be nostalgic, but I sort of try and fight against it. I feel like it's not in my head, it's not something I want to indulge in, whatever it is. But I do remember even being nostalgic at like 10 years old or something, and having for being nostalgic for when I was like 8 or some. I'm not sure what it is. But yeah, in terms of like nostalgic can be quite cliched when it comes out in terms of film or media. How nostalgia is conveyed, I can find not interesting. But I suppose if it's another ingredient or color mixed in with other things, it can be. Yeah, that project, it was basically me. I've been doing it for years, taking bits of, glass from the sea that is soft. I'm sort of taking it out of the sea and putting it around. So there's some in different parts of London, just in between rocks, in between bricks, just in location, which I had written down, but I've kind of forgotten where a lot of them are. And then I sort of imagined going to collect them or going to find them, or them there on their own.
Have you ever drawn a map of all these locations?
I've sort of made a list, but not drawn a map. But yes, and then I thought one day maybe I might go and get them and return them back to the Thames or wherever they are, or leave them for someone. Yeah, I could do that. But yeah.
Yeah. So still the playful element.
Yeah.
You're displacing objects and.
Yeah, I think like for me, I am quite playful, but also there's not always an intentionality when I do something. Like the meaning comes later. I don't know what I'm doing when I do things. Then 6 months later, I realize, okay, that's what it was, and that's what I was doing. I think at the start, I didn't recognize this. I saw it as someone that just didn't really know what they were doing. But if you don't know particularly why you're doing things, but I was doing a lot of doing, and then you start to recognize themes amongst all of these actions as time goes by. And then you can kind of put a frame around it or see it in a different kind of way. So yeah, with things like that, I would just do them. I would have them in my pocket because I collect them because I find them quite evocative and they've been shaped by a process. And then I will just feel the need to just put one somewhere, and I like the idea of it being there. I don't know why. You know, perhaps the therapist might say to me, oh, you know, I wonder why you felt the need to put those there. I don't know. But when you start to do it over and over and over, then it sort of becomes something else, and I think about it in a different way. But
How many of them are there?
20, something like that.
And they're all around London?
Yeah, which sounds like, when I think about it, I don't, it's not something I ever think about, but if I think about it, it suddenly sounds a bit strange. But yeah, it's just, yeah, I don't know. I have like another thing where which is similar, where on and off I collect people drawing rooms, like the layout of a room from their childhoods. Maybe not their own house, but somewhere they visited now and again, somewhere that they can't quite reach in their memory. But if they draw the layout, like from above, maybe they start to remember the layout of the place at the time. And like I have a collection of these, I ask friends and other people to do it. And it's not something I think about. It just pops into my mind occasionally, and then I will do it again. But it kind of just exists in the background. Yeah. So I was just going to say that I think I've always made music, but I've often done things like this as well. Like in my notebooks, there would be song titles, but then there would be ideas for other things next to that. So yeah.
Do you define yourself in any way as an artist? Can you say I'm a musician, I'm a sound art, or you?
No, I mean,
you've given that up.
I often think I'm none of these. I often think I'm not any of these things. I'm just, you know, sometimes I'm in a really bad mood and I think I can't do any of these things properly. They've all been badly realized. I just focus on the negative things. I don't know how I think about myself. It changes all the time, so I don't know if I necessarily trust it. It's fragmented. I think I'm someone that makes things. I like a lot of the music I've made, but it's sometimes it comes out in a rather strange form because it has to come through me. So, yeah, I just think I'm someone that I like atmospheres and emotions, that's such a broad thing to say. So
and memories.
Yeah, and memories. I like things that are evocative and intimate. You know, I do have these themes, even if I didn't know that I did, like repetition
and small things.
That's
the impression you gave me, that you like small everyday gestures and small things, and
yeah,
you're playing quite a lot with them.
I do like that. I don't know why. I like units. You know, like units of things. I like stones and rocks because to me they look a bit like thoughts. You know, they're infinitely different all the time, but they're similar. Yeah.
On your Instagram, there's a little pebble game.
Oh, what's that?
There's a guitar riff, and then it's quite funny.
Yeah, I can't remember.
And I'm actually listing, and the funny thing is that the things that I remember the most seeing are the things that I've watched together with the little boy. because he would get fascinated by this. And no, but this again, can we see this again?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that maybe that is, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's the playful. I think I like the way kids approach the world, and um, yeah, I like to present things in a simplistic manner, but perhaps deceptively simple. So it may seem simplistic, and it may be simplistic, but perhaps there's like a hidden resonance, or not complexity, but an endless amount of configurations with something. I think that's, yeah. Yeah, I'm not always so eloquent about saying what my work is about, but and also with music, even when more people were interested in it, they would not necessarily ask you what things are about, or I wouldn't share what that melody reminded me of, things like that. People are more interested in, technical things or stuff like that. So, yeah, but it's nice to talk about. Yeah.
Any future projects apart from continuing your collections of small things and displacing little objects?
Yeah, whether I get around to doing them, I don't know. I have a list of things. I don't know what you're like, but I have a big list of things that may never happen.
If you will abandon your quick and
yeah, if I
schedule.
There's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, which is to have a big block of wax, make some wax blocks, and inside it have a small sound. So then the wax becomes hard, so it's like a sculpture, and in the middle would be a tiny sound, a tone, or perhaps a voice, which you can just hear through the wax, and then maybe you scrape away and it becomes clearer. I tried a little bit to work on that, but I got distracted. But it's
midway between a performance and a sculpture.
I think it will start as a sculpture, and you will have to get close to them to hear them. And some of the pieces will be small, so you can hear the sound, and some will be bigger, and the sound will be right in the middle, but the sound will be small. But if it's a high frequency, it might come through. And then at some point I think there would be a performance which would, you would sculpt the sound, as the material. Then the sound comes, and yeah. So I think.
Will you let your public do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'll be too controlling, and I'll be like wanting to do it.
Because it's a beautiful image, just digging for a sound and hearing it approaching.
Yeah,
it's quite.
Yeah, and I think, but for me, I have to work out what things are good and evocative as ideas, and are best kept as an idea. And when they become when you try and actualize them, they lose some of their resonance. So I would love to actualize that, and when I don't know whether it would become the thing that I hoped it would, but I think maybe that's something that I will pursue. There's technical things that I would have to work out, like how to embed a sound within liquid wax as it hardens without damaging the sound. Yeah.
But these are just technicalities. I'm pretty sure you're going to find out. But I'm really fascinated by this huge sculpture that now I'm even imagining how dig for the sound. Because it's when the artist does it, then you become it's a bit of a voyeuristic sensation that you have as audience. I'm thinking, because when you talked about it, I started seeing myself in the public, looking at you, digging in your own sculpture and knowing actually exactly what you're digging for. So, but then I try to imagine myself searching for a sound inside wax, and wax is actually also physically very very pleasant to work with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that one made me so curious, and I think you go through many emotions as you get closer to the sound.
I mean, I think you're right. Like that might even become the most interesting part of the work, just that action of, and it might not be, like you said, might not be me, but just the people watching people in different ways remove it and getting closer. That might become the whole thing, as opposed to like the sculpture might just be the piece in waiting before people do that. So I mean, I don't know if you've worked with wax a lot. I've always been a bit fascinated with it, and it has like this interesting connection with listening and sound. In different ways, like wax cylinders, and obviously the wax in your ears, and so there's. I feel like there's something there waiting to be made. That's what I would do next if I could just click my fingers and begin. Which I suppose I can, but there's other things as well.
Well, Matt, thank you so much. And thank you for this last image. It's really beautiful.
Oh,
you just made my day with it.
Nice.
I hope you'll get to make this work, and I hope you'll get to one day to draw the map, because I think I'd be curious to go search in a treasure hunt around London.
I've probably forgotten most of them,
so they're lost.
Yeah, there are a lot. Yeah, it's quite a stretch. I'm sort of reflecting on it for the first time. So yes, I don't know why I've done it. But yes, there are quite a lot of them. There's some near here, and so I think some are less obvious, so they'll never be found, and some were kind of, they stick out a bit, so the sun might catch them, so someone might just pick up and throw it away or something. So again, you can frame it in different ways, but
you find it a bit
funny,
nostalgic.
Yeah, I suppose it is. I sort of fight against nostalgia. I'm not sure I know what it is, but yeah, maybe I should embrace it more. But anyway, thanks for inviting me to talk. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been really a pleasure, and thank you for giving us your time and giving us your piece.
Oh, thanks. No, it's been great for me, but it's really nice to talk about it. So, thank you. Bye-bye. Nice to meet you. Bye.
Very nice meeting you.
Bye-bye.
And with this, we end our Spring Pulse 2022. I hope you enjoyed following us. You can still experience Matt's piece until tomorrow evening. We'll be putting links to his works on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. So I guess this is it. And until the next time, for next and hopefully just as exciting Pulse series. Goodbye.